So hi guys, I'm Aryan. I've been doing competitive programming for about 2 years now. So today we're going to discuss a topic that was in week 9 of the learning series, which was the week 9 of the learning series with advanced data structures. And it was mainly focused on two data structures, which was Fenwick trees and segment trees. So in this session, I won't be covering Fenwick trees, but I'm going to focus the entire session on segment trees. Okay. So moving on, let's look at the sample problem for a segment tree. Okay. So you're given an array consisting of n integers where n is less than equal to 10 to the power 5. You also have q queries where q is less than equal to 10 to the power 5 of two types. The first query modifies a value of the array. It sets array at position x to y, where x and y are given as input. And the second type of query asks you to find a value in the range L to R, where L is given as an input, where L and R are given as an input. And this could be any value. It could be the maximum element in the range. It could be the minimum element in the range. It could be the sum in the range. And there are many such queries that I could ask. Okay. Now there are many approaches you can take for this. Okay. So I'm going to discuss the sample problem for segment trees again. So you're given an array consisting of n integers where n is less than equal to 10 to the power 5. You're also given q queries where q is less than equal to 10 to the power 5 of two types. The first query modifies an element in the array. Okay, so you're given two integers x and y as input, and you have to change the xth element in the array to y. Okay, and the second type of query asks you to find the maximum, minimum, sum. It can be many types of queries. These are just examples in the range L to R. Okay, where L and R are also given as input. So let's look at some approaches we can use to solve this problem. Okay, array consisting of n elements. Okay. And now you have q queries as well. So let me just input the queries. Okay, so first we can input the type of query. And then if type is equal to 1 else, and if type is equal to 1, then we need to take an x and y. Otherwise, we need to take an L and R. Okay, so in the type 1 query, we simply need to modify the xth element of the array. So in that case, we can do a direct modification where we do AR or x is equal to y. Okay, and in the second type of query, we need to, let's say we need to find the sum. Okay, so we need to find the sum in the range LR. Okay, so to do this, the first obvious solution is to just literally iterate over every element and find the sum. So let's try that. Okay. Okay, so we have a pretty basic solution for the problem that we were given. So let's just run it to make sure everything's fine. So let's query for, my bad. I'm just gonna run that again. So n is equal to 5, the elements are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 3 queries. The first query is of type 2 in the range 1 to 3 and prints 9, which is, okay, which is right. Cool. So this pretty much works. Okay, so let's analyze the complexity for this. Okay, so we're running q loops. Okay, this is an order 1 modification, right? And this runs a loop from L to R, and so R minus L plus 1 can be at most n, right? Because there are at most n elements in the array, so they can ask the entire array as a query. So this is an order of n. So this is n loops. Okay, so this entire thing comes out to be something like order of n dot q. Okay, and for 10 to the power 5 that won't pass, but if n and q are something like less than 1000, then that's a valid solution. All right, let's try another solution. Okay, let's pretend that we have no type 1 queries and we only need to process type 2 queries. Okay, then we can do something called prefix sums. which I think was in week 5, I think. Yeah. So
Can you increase the font size?
Yeah. Fine.
Yeah.
Great. So prefix sums, basically, prefix sums I stores the sum from ARR 0 to ARR I. Okay. So we could use this. We could say prefix 0 is equal to ARR 0. And then we could do this. Prefix I is equal to ARR I plus prefix I minus 1. So this is an order of n build. Okay. And then to answer this, instead of doing this whole loop, we can just say sum is equal to prefix R minus prefix L minus 1. And there's a case where L is 0, but we can ignore that for now. There's an easy fix for that. Okay, I'll just do it. But if L is equal to 0, then we subtract 0, otherwise we subtract this, all right? So that's an easy way to do it with prefix sums. And I'm not describing this too much because we've done it earlier, but this is an order 1 operation. So this is a way to do it in order of Q, right? So this seems optimal, but the problem is this is without updates, right? To be able to handle updates and answer the query, that's a challenge for which we need segment trees, all right? So let's discuss what are segment trees, okay? So a segment tree is a binary tree in which each node stores the answer for a range L to R. So in our case, we're finding the sum, right? So in our segment tree, each node will store the answer for a range L to R, okay? So if the range of a node is greater than 1, which means that if R minus L plus 1 is greater than 1, then it's a leaf node, okay? Meaning that, I'm sorry, it's not a leaf node. If it's equal to 1, then it's a leaf node. If it's greater than 1, then it's not a leaf node. That's an error, okay? So if it's not a leaf node, then it has to have 2 children, okay? If the range is greater than 1, then it has to have 2 children, okay? So for any node I, let L plus R by 2 be mid I. And it's okay if you don't keep up with all this because we're going to discuss it in depth. But let L plus R by 2 be mid I, okay? Then the left child of that node should store the solution for the range L to mid I, and the right child will store the solution for the range mid plus 1 to R, okay? So basically what we're doing is, the root node will store the solution for 1 to n. So what we're doing is that each node stores the solution for a range, and then the left child stores the solution for the left half of the range, and the right child stores the solution for the right half of the range. So we can look at how a segment tree is structured, right? So I've just given arbitrary values to the nodes 0, 1, 2. That's arbitrary. But let's look at the range they're storing, okay? So this is an array of 7 integers. So the root node, which is node 0, is storing the range for, storing the answer for the range 1 to 7, okay? And as you can see, mid for this one will be 1 plus 7 by 2, which is 4. So the left child is storing the answer for 1 to 4. The left child is 1 here. It's storing the answer for 1 to 4. The right child is storing the answer for 5 to 7, right? Left half and right half. Similarly, for node 1, the left half is 1 to 2, node 3, and the right half is 3 to 4, which is stored at node 4. Okay, so at each level, we're splitting the array up into more parts. Okay, and we can observe here that the total size of the segment tree will never exceed 4 into the length of the array. So it's not a massive data structure usage. Okay, it's basically order of n only because 4 can just be treated as a constant, right? So now each node will need to have a merge operation. Okay, so we can see that node 7, since it's only storing the answer for 1 and 1, it can just take this value directly from the array, right? So node 7 will just store array 1, node 8 will store array 2, node 9 will store array 3, so on and so forth, right? But to find the answer for node 3, your naive idea would be to iterate, right? Your naive idea for node 3 would be to iterate from 1 to 2, find the sum, and then store it in node 3. However, there's an easier way to do this, right? We can see that node 7 is already storing the answer for 1 to 1, and node 8 is already storing the answer for 2 to 2. Okay, so node 3 can just be the sum of those two nodes, right? Similarly, you can see node 1, you need to store the sum for 1 to 4. Instead of iterating from 1 to 4, we can see that node 3 has stored the answer for 1 to 2, node 4 has stored the answer for 3 to 4. So we can just add up the value of those two nodes, okay? So this can be called a merge operation, okay? So we can see for sum, the merge operation is that Si is basically the value stored at segment tree at the ith location. So Si can be the sum of the left child and the right child in a minimum in a segment tree where we need to find the minimum in a range. Si can store minimum of left child and right child, and in a segment tree where we need to store the maximum of a range, Si can store maximum of L child and right child, right? Now, one more important thing, okay? There's an issue with my PowerPoint. Okay, yeah. One more important thing is that we can see, let's look at the numbering pattern, right? Let's look at both the children. For 0, the children are 1 and 2. For 1, the children are 3 and 4. For 2, the children are 5 and 6. So the children are always one after the other, right? They're always adjacent numbers. And if another observation is that the left child is always 2 into I plus 1, okay? So for 0, 2 into I plus 1 is equal to 1. And the right child is 2 into I plus 2, right? Because they're adjacent numbers. So the right child for 0 is 2. Similarly, for 1, it's 3. For 1, the left child is 3 and the right child is 4. For 2, the left child is 5, the right child is 6, right? They all follow the formula. I've written it on the top right corner. Okay. So this means that instead of making some complicated C++ structure and then creating nodes with pointers or something, we can just store it in a linear array because each node has a unique value and there's an easy formula for finding the children of each node. Okay. So let's look at the implementation for building a segment tree, okay? So the implementation will be something like this. Oh, let me just look at if you guys have written anything in the chat. Okay, so we took our array. Okay, now let's make a segment tree, okay? So a segment tree, as I said before, can just be an array, okay, an integer array. And its maximum size, as I discussed, okay, the maximum size of a segment tree is 4 into n.
Can you increase the font size, please?
Right, sorry. The maximum size of a segment tree is 4 into n, all right? So we can make it simply like this, okay? Let me just make it easier. Okay, so this is our segment tree, right? Now let's look at the build function for this, okay? So let's write the build function. So over here, L is just Li, as we discussed in the presentation. It's the lower bound of the range that node I stores the answer for. Ui is basically the same thing. It's the upper bound for the range that I stores the answer for. I is the index of the node we're currently on. ARR is our input array, and this is our segment tree. All right. Now, if L is equal to U, then it means we need to store the answer for a single element in the array. Right? Sorry. So we can do this. We can say something like segment tree at I is equal to array at L. Does this make sense to everyone? Because I is storing the range, the answer for the range L to L. Okay. So it's basically the sum of the range L to L is just ARRL. That's why we're doing this. Is that clear to everyone? Why you initialize size of array as 4 into n? Any proof for this 4 into n? Yeah, there is a proof, and maybe I'll go into it. There's actually a more specific number, and I'll go into it after the session. Okay, I don't want to do it right now, but I'll look at it as soon as we're done with most of the stuff. Okay. Or I mean, I can just show it to you right now. Okay, give me a second. Yeah. So over here, we can see, imagine that this was a complete tree, okay? That there was 613 and 614 as well, Okay, then let's try to analyze the size of the tree. Okay, at the bottom, just imagine that it's a power of 2. Okay, so at the bottom we have all of our nodes. Okay, so let's say it's 8 nodes. So we have 8 nodes at the bottom. Okay, on top of that we have 8 by 4 nodes. Okay, let me do this here. Okay, so the bottommost level has n nodes. Okay, the next one has n by 2 nodes. The next one has n by 4 nodes, right? So on and so forth. Okay, now there's a pretty exact number you can get. Okay, and the way to do this is just that imagine the segment tree is a complete tree. Okay, so if n is not a power of 2, okay, then round up n to a power of 2. So the way to do this is we just do something like n is log 2n will basically be a floor, right? So you can do ceil of log 2n and we can do power of 2 to that. So now n is the closest power of 2, okay, higher than n. Okay, so this just makes it easier for us to calculate. Okay, so if n is not a power of 2, then we just round up n to a power of 2. Okay, and now look at it. Okay, so the final node, let this value be, okay, okay, so let's just call temp val this. Okay, this is the number of nodes. Okay, actually we can just call it n. No, okay, so let's call it temp val. All right, now the bottommost level has 2 to the power temp val nodes. Okay, the next level has 2 to the power temp val nodes divided by 2 number of nodes, right? We discussed this here, and we can just replace that with temp val nodes minus 1. Okay, then the next one again is divided by 2, right? So the next level then has 2 to the power temp val nodes minus 1 divided by 2, which we can just do another minus 1 here. So minus 2, so on and so forth, until we have only one node remaining, which is 2 to the power 0. Okay, so we basically, so each level contains nodes equal to a power of 2, and the total number of nodes is 2 to the power 0 plus 2 to the power 1 plus 2 to the power 2 plus dot 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 plus 2 to the power temp val. Okay, and I won't go into proof for this as well, but the sum of the first I powers of 2 is 2 to the power I plus 1 minus 1. Okay, so basically that means that the total number of nodes is 2 to the power temp val plus 1 minus 1. Okay, and how can we prove that? Okay, so I'm not actually sure how to prove that it's equal to 4 into n, but the point is that it's a pretty approximate value you can get, right? So temp val, okay, let's look at how big temp val can be compared to n. Okay, a temp val is always less than 2 into n. Okay, yeah, that's actually fine. So temp val is always less than 2 into n. Not sorry, n is always less than 1 second. Okay, let me just rewrite this. This can be written as 2 to the power temp val multiplied by 2 minus 1. Okay, Now 2 to the power temp val is basically what we did here, right? And this value can never be more than 2n. So let's just make it its bound, which is 2 into n multiplied by 2 minus 1. So we get 4n minus 1. Okay. That's why the limit on the size of a segment tree is 4n. Never thought about that before now. Okay. I hope it's clear, the reasoning for it being 4n. Was it clear, guys? Cool. And yeah, thank you. It was important. Okay, let's get back to the build function, right? So if L and U for a node is the same, then it means that we need to store the answer for a single element in the array. So we can just set segment tree I is equal to ARRL, right? Now, if L is not equal to U, and I'm just doing this for, I don't know, we can just do else here. That's not a big deal. Let's return this value. Okay. If L is not equal to U, then we first need to build our left child. Okay. And I've made some, I've made a template that I hope you guys will also use because it's very simple. But mid LU basically stores the value we discussed. So we can change it to this, okay? Mid is equal to L plus U by 2. And so the range of the left child that we discussed earlier was from L to mid, okay? Oh, sorry, let me make this R to make it easier. Yeah. So as we discussed earlier, the range of the left child will be from L to mid, okay? That's why we're passing these parameters. Then the index of the left child, I can replace the template, okay? Let me just do that. Will be in I into 2 plus 1, okay? The index for the right child will be I into 2 plus 2. This we discussed all of this in the presentation, okay? So now we're just building the values for the left child and the right child. Okay, once we've built those values, okay, we discussed this earlier, but let me just go over it, okay? So we have the answer for L to mid, and we have the answer for mid plus 1 to R, okay? And we need to store the answer for L to R, okay? Now, obviously, L2, the answer for L to R, and we're doing sum right now, so the sum from L to R is equal to just this, right? The sum from L to mid plus the sum from mid plus 1 to R, right? So we can do this. We can say segment tree I is equal to segment tree at left child, okay, plus segment tree at the right child. Sorry, habits. Anyways, we can do this, right? And a better way to would be that when anyways returning the value, so we can just substitute the sum, okay? So we can do this, which is replacing the array call with the function call, okay? And then we can just return it. So we can put the return here only. We can return segment tree I, okay? So we've effectively built our segment tree, and let me give you an example for this. So, okay, we have a segment tree 4 into n. I'm removing the proof from earlier. That we can say build from 0 to n minus 1 starting from 0, ARR and segment tree, right? And for each node, okay, let me print it out as well. I will print out the range it's storing. Okay. And finally, we can print out the value it's storing. Okay, so let's try and run this. Sorry, there's an error somewhere. Oh, yeah, so let's try to run this and we'll analyze the output a bit. Sorry. So we have n is equal to 7, and let's do 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Something simple. Okay. Now let's see. Node 7 is storing from 0 to 0 and the answer is 1. 8 is storing from 1 to 1, the answer is 2. Okay. 3 is storing from 0 to 1 and the answer is 1 plus 2 or 7 plus 8 is equal to 3, right? 9 is storing from 2 to 2 and the answer is 3. Okay. 10 is storing from 3 to 3 and the answer is 4. 4 is stored from 2 to 3, this, and the answer is 7, right? And you can verify that for the entire rate from 0 to 6, the answer is 28. And 7 into 8 divided by 2 is 28. So that's valid. Cool. So we can verify that a build function worked. Is this clear? Pradeep, I'm just using int mid because I didn't want macro to be difficult for anyone to understand. Devansh wants to know the parameters of the build function. Okay. So do you remember the what I mentioned in the presentation, Devansh? Let me just open it up. Right. So in the presentation here, I had shown that mid is basically the mid value of a function, right? It's L plus R by 2. And L and R are basically the range for which the answer the node is storing, right? Right here. Okay. So over here, similarly in this function, L and R are basically the range that we're storing the answer for. I is the index at which we're storing the answer. Okay. ARR is just the input array that we're given, and segment tree is our segment tree, right? So those are the parameters. Is that fine? Are you sure there are a ton of applications? We'll go over them in a bit. Okay, let me just clear out the implementation and then we'll discuss its applications. We have like 3-4 problems planned, so we'll have a long session. Okay, great. So let me discuss more parts. So we're going to discuss how to query a range. Okay. Now we're going to write a function that's called query function. Okay. And that function is recursive again. So this is how a recursion works. Okay. For any node I that we're on, okay, we're going to wait. The range we want to query is bounded by LL and RR. Okay. So the node's range is LI and RI, and the query range is LL and RR. Okay. I don't want you guys to confuse this, so I'm just clarifying once. Okay. If we want to query the range 3 to 6, okay, and we are on the second node, let's say, not the second node, okay, we're on the okay, whatever, we're on the second node, okay, then LL is equal to 3, RR is equal to 6, and as we can see from the second node here, Li is equal to 2, is equal to 4, sorry, and Ri is equal to 6, okay? So that's what Li and Ri and LL and RR are, okay? Don't confuse them. Back to the presentation. So then if Li is greater than equal to LL and Ri is less than equal to RR, okay, which means that the range of the function that we're, the range of the node that we're on, Li and Ri, that range lies completely inside the query range, okay? And let's say we're doing sum. If our current range lies completely inside the query range, okay, then obviously that range needs to be added to the answer, right? Those elements will be part of the sum. So we can just return Si at that point, okay, for that node, right? And just for reference, the query function for any range LL and RR just tells us that in the subtree of that node, what's the answer for that range, right? How many elements do we have in that range and what's the sum of those elements? That's what the query function does, okay? So for the node I, if the current range is completely inside the query range, then all of the elements in that range will contribute to the answer. So we can just return the sum of the range that we've already stored. Okay. Then if RR is less than equal to mid I, which is the second condition, then it means that so basically if the first condition is not satisfied, then it means that the current range has a partial overlap with the query range, but it's not completely overlapping, right? So right now we're trying to find which child of the node we should go to. Okay. If RR is less than equal to mid I, then it means the query range doesn't have an overlap with the right child. Okay. Because mid I is the max limit of the left range. Okay. And if the entirety of the query range is within the left range, then we'll just go to the left child, right? We don't even need to go to the right child. So we just return query function at the left child. Okay. However, similarly, if LL is greater than mid I, then it means that we don't have to go to the left child because the entire query range lies with the right child. Okay, it has no overlap with the left child. So we just return query function at the right child. Okay, and else if none of this is true, okay, then it means that there's a partial overlap and the query range lies both inside the left child and the right child. So in that case, we return our merge function that we discussed earlier. For some, it'll just be plus. So we return the merge function on query function at the left child and query function at the right child. Okay. So let's discuss the implementation. Yeah. Okay. Before that, does anybody have any doubts? Okay, wait. Does anybody have any doubts? Okay. How do we handle some overlapping range? What do you mean? Could you explain how we? What do you mean by overlapping range? Okay, it's clear. Never mind. Okay. So let me discuss the implementation of the query function. Before we do that, I'm going to make a merge function as well. Okay. There's a problem on my keyboard again. Okay, it's back. So let's discuss the merge function. Okay. So let's say you have to find sum. Okay. Then you would return a plus b. Okay. Let's say you have to find minimum. You would return minimum of a and b. Let's say you have to find maximum. You would return maximum of a and b. Okay. And right now it would seem trivial, like we can just, I'm sorry, I have a define. Yeah. So right now it would seem trivial because we can easily just write min and write max and write plus. Okay. But there are some segment trees that are really innovative. So for example, you can create a segment tree which allows you to query the lists in a range. Okay. Where list is the longest increasing subsequence. Okay, and I'm not going to discuss how to do it right now, maybe if we have time at the end. But you can use segment trees for really innovative things like this. And for that, you'll have really complicated merge functions. So if you're using a segment tree template, I always recommend that you create the merge function separately. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that. Instead of doing plus here in the build function, we write merge and we put the comma here for the function. Okay, this is always a better way to do it so you can modify it easily later. Okay, now let's do the query function. Okay, let's call it query and similar parameters to last time. Okay, segment tree, right? The additional parameters are we do left and right, okay, which is the query range. Okay, so I'm going to remove the output statements, by the way, from the build function. Okay, let's figure out how we can do the query function. Going back to the PowerPoint, we said, sorry, if the range is completely overlapping, then we can return the value. So let's do this, okay? If L is greater than equal to LL and R is less than equal to RR, then we could return the value here. We don't need to look further in the subtree. Okay, so that's the first thing done. Then if RR is less than equal to mid LR, okay, by the way, in the last time I did mid, but I'm not going to do every time. So I just have in the macros I've defined mid LR is equal to L plus R by 2. Okay, and you guys should also do this. It's very, very convenient. Okay, so if RR is less than equal to mid LR, then we can just return query L mid LR Okay, left child I, and left child is defined as I into 2 plus 1. Again, very convenient, you should do it. Segment G, LL and RR. Okay. Now conversely, if LL is greater than mid LR, then we can do return query mid L R plus 1 R right child segment tree LL and RR. Okay. So we've handled the first three, and the final case is that if none of these work, then we just do this final return function. So in that case, we'll just do return merge, and I'm just going to copy paste because I don't want to retype everything. But here's the query for the left range, and here is the query for the right range. Okay. And note that the way we've implemented this, we don't have to do this all the time. Okay. There's a simpler way to do this, but this is just one extra line. And the advantage is this implementation will never lead you to a situation where the node range and query range are completely disjoint. Okay, so there will always be some overlap with the node range and the query range. Okay, if over here look at line 45, if we had queried the right child as well in this situation, then there would have been a disjoint sets, right? The right child and the query range would have been completely disjoint. Okay, so we never reach that situation because of these statements. Okay, and I think it's very useful. Okay, so this is how a query works. Let's look at some examples. Okay, after we've built it, let's try querying some stuff. So let's say cout query 0 n minus 1 0 segment tree, and let's look at some ranges. Okay, let's look at 0 and 3. Okay, some more stuff. I'll do 4 or 5 queries. Okay, so let's look at 1 and 5, 1 and 4, 3 and 6.
Arun, can you increase the font size?
More. Okay, is this fine?
Yeah, because you are streaming on YouTube and Facebook as well.
Sure. Okay, so this is what we can do for the query functions. Okay, I'm just giving you like some examples and we'll test them out, right? Let me just copy this rebate used earlier. Okay, and let's analyze this. So from 0 to 3, okay? So 0, 1, 2, 3 is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, which is 10, right? So the first query is right. Let's look at the second query, 1 to 5, okay? So 1 to 5, 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, 20 again, perfect. Okay, let's look at 1 to 4. Okay, so 2 plus 3 plus 4, 1 to 4, 2 plus 5, yeah, 14. Okay, so you can do this for the remaining 2 as well. The point is that the query function is working perfectly. Okay, so now at this point, we can build a segment tree and we can answer queries. So we're essentially at the same spot as prefix sums, right? Because prefix sums could also do everything that I've mentioned above. But one thing prefix sums couldn't do is the update. Okay, so let's discuss how we can update values on the segment tree. Let me just look if there are any doubts before that. Devansh, what do you mean? Can you make us visualize that second point? Do you mean this point if RR is less than equal to mid-I? Just write in the chat yes or no if that's what you mean. Yes. Okay, fine. Okay, I'll share a whiteboard for this. Okay, I'll just write my compiler and like I'll just hope that you guys can visualize it decently. Okay, so this situation is something like this. Okay, we're at a range, let's say 1 to 10. Okay, and the left child stores something like 1 to 5, yeah, and the right child stores 6 to 10. Okay, and now let's say our query range is 1 to 3. Okay, and we're currently at this node. Okay, our LL is equal to 1, RR is equal to 3, LI is equal to 1, RI is equal to 10. Okay, now something that we could do is we could do this. Okay, query 1 5 for 1 3 plus query 6 10 for 1 3. Okay, now the issue with this is that look at the second part. 6 to 10 and 1 to 3 have no common elements, right? The right subtree, which is the right child, which is the range from 6 to 10, this part has nothing to offer the answer for the range 1 to 3. So there's no point that we even go into that node, right? This thing 1 to 5, so nodes 1 to 3 requires nodes 1 to 3, right? 1 to 5 contains all three of those nodes, okay? 6 to 10 does not contain any of them. So 6 to 10 won't help with our answer only. So there's simply no point entering that subtree, right? That's what I mean. So if RR is less than equal to mid-I, so you can see mid is equal to 5, right? So RR3 is less than mid-I. So in that case, the entire answer lies in the left subtree, right? So we only need to query the left child, which is 1 to 5, right? That's why we're doing this. Does that make sense? Devansh, does that make sense? Okay, great. Okay, so now I'm just going to go over the update real quick and then we'll get into some more interesting stuff. Okay, so this is a point update, right? Which means we only update one value in the array to another value. Okay, so the way to do that is this. If L is equal to, so again, the terminology is this, okay? X is the position of the value we're updating. Y is the value we're updating the position at X2. And Li and Ri are just the range of the function, okay? Range of the node, I'm so sorry. Let me write this in some more detail as well. So let's say we're at node 2, okay, and the range for this was 4 to 6. And we need to update element 5 to 7. Okay, so Li is equal to 4, Ri is equal to 6, X is equal to 5, and Y is equal to 7. Okay, that's the terminology. So again, it's a similar recursive function. And the logic is this, okay? So if Li is equal to Ri, which means that we have a single element in the range, okay? L is equal to R, single element. And Li is equal to X. So the single element is the element that we need to update, okay? So we've reached the node that we actually need to update. Then we set aside the value at that node to Y, okay? So we're just updating the value of our node to the new value, okay? Now, if we're at a node where Ri is less than X or Li is greater than X, this means that the node we need to update doesn't lie in the subtree of I. Let me explain this in some depth, okay? Are there any doubts in the chat? Okay, no. So let me go to C line. Yeah. So if we're in the range 1 to 8, let's say, okay, and we need to wait. No, okay, this is not a good example. Let's say we're in the range 1 to 4, okay? And this is the other child, okay? And the parent of this was 1 to 8. Okay, so now we're in the range 1 to 4, okay? And let's say we need to update X is equal to 5 and Y is equal to 7, okay? Then in this case, the range 1 to 4 does not contain the value we need to update. So we don't need to update that subtree. right? The values in that subtree will remain unchanged. So we don't need to do anything. We just return the value of that subtree. That's all we do. We return the old value. There's no change there. Okay. So that's the second point. Okay. The second point is in the case that the node we need to update doesn't lie in the subtree of I. And the third case is where the node we need to update lies in the subtree of I, but it's not a single node range. Okay. So in that case, we just update SI. So we run the update function on the left child, and we run the update function of the right child, and then we rebuild SI, right? Like we build in the like we did in the build function. We merge the values of the left child and the right child again, and we return that value after setting it to SI. Okay. So if everything's kind of clear, I'll move with the implementation. Can you give some example where it is difficult to analyze the what comes in every node of the segment tree? What do you mean? Could you like explain a little better what you mean? No, we're updating a single point right now. Range updates we'll do later, but right now we're updating a single point. Is that fine? Okay, great. So let me discuss the update function. Okay. So again, it's an integer function, and it's again similar to the query. So int l, int r, int I, int segment tree. Okay, instead of ll and rr, we'll do int x, which is the location of the value we need to update, and int y is what we need to update it to. Okay, so first condition was if l is equal to r and l is equal to x, then we can return segment. We can return segment tree I is equal to y. Okay. The second condition was if it's not in the range. If L is greater than X or R is less than X, okay, then we can just return segment tree because we don't need to make any change here. Okay. And finally, this is in the case that a point lies somewhere in range. Okay. So in this case, we update both. Okay. We update L mid, LR, L child, segment tree, X and Y. I don't know. Okay, there's no issue. And we update mid LR plus 1 R right child I segment tree XY. Okay. So we update both of them. And then we can set the segment tree value to those, but instead I'll just do this. Okay. We can just say return segment tree at I is equal to merge, update this, update right child, and the merge function is over. Okay, so I'll just zoom back and sorry. So this is our update function. Is that clear to everyone? It was just a direct implementation of what we discussed in the presentation. Was that clear to everyone? You can just write clear or something in the chat if it's fine. Repeat the last line. Okay. So in the last line, this is the situation where the point we need to update lies somewhere in the range of L to R, but we don't know where. Okay. It lies somewhere in the range, but we have no idea where. So in this case, what we're doing is we're updating the left child, we're updating the right child. Okay, we're updating both of them, and then we're merging both using this merge function that we created earlier, right? It just returns a plus b in our current situation. So we're merging both, and we're putting that value into segment tree I. Okay, like we did in the build function. Yeah, the build function up here. Like we did here, we're just doing the same thing here. Okay, we're rebuilding the values because of the update. Does that make sense? Yeah, time complexity I'll just discuss in a moment. But okay, I'll just go for it. Where's keynote? Yeah. So the time complexity for both operations build for all operations. Okay. So for build, it was order of n, right? Because in build we visit each node once. Okay, and there are a maximum of 4 n nodes. So you could even say that it's order of 4, and you could say that. I mean 4, and you could say that. But 4 is just a constant, so I'm removing that. So yeah, this build is order of n. Okay, query is order of log n, and the way to prove this, okay, it's pretty basic, but it's basically just that um, we're composing the entire query range out of powers of 2, right? So they're at most log n ranges, something like that, okay? And update is also order of log n, similar reason, okay? The proofs for these are all available online, and they're not that simple, so you might want to look at them after. But that's the time complexity, okay? It's log n n. How update is log n because if two halves are working simultaneously, right? Okay, so right, you could think that would be order of n because we're exploring the entire tree, but we're not doing that, right? In the case where it's not in the range, we're exiting immediately. Okay, I'll show you the proof for the update thing if you want, but this should not be the focus, but I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so in this slide, let's say we have to update node 9. Okay, so we're only actually going to follow the path from 0 to 9. Okay, let me write here. Okay, so we're updating node 0. Okay, so we explore both children. Okay, updating node 2, let's say we go to node 2 first because two children are 1 and 2. So let's say we go to node 2 first. Okay, we realize that 5 and 7 are nowhere in the range of 3, right? So we don't need to explore this further, so we just return. Okay, then we go to node 1. Okay, updating I'm not going to write node every time. Updating 1. Okay, and 1, it's somewhere in the range again, so we explore both. Okay, let's go to 3. Okay, look at node 3, right? It's storing the range from 1 to 2. Okay, but element 3 is nowhere in that range. So instead of updating further or exploring further, we just return. Okay, then we go to updating 4. Okay, and updating 4, 3 3 is somewhere in that range, so we explore further. Okay, next we go to updating 9. Okay, and this is the node we need, so we update this and return. And updating 10, that's not in range, so we just return. Okay, so out of 12 here, notice that we only accessed 7 nodes. Okay, and like 7 is obviously not log 12, but the way it scales, it'll be similar to log n only. And the reason is that since it's a binary tree, the height of the tree is at most log n, right? Let me just write that. So the height of the tree is, I mean, it's not around, it's log n. Okay, and the update function, we're following the path from the root all the way down to the leaf node, right? So the height of the tree is being traversed, and that's log n. Okay, all of the nodes that are not in the path, we're only accessing once and returning. Okay, the entire subtree of 2, this entire subtree we didn't explore, right? Subtree of 3, this thing we didn't explore. Okay, so we're essentially just doing log n operations, right? That's why the update is log n for, I mean, that's why the time complexity is log n for update. We can also handle the excess function call by calculating mid, right? Oh yeah, we can do that. But it doesn't really matter because the function call literally just returns the value. So its time complexity is pretty much the same as just accessing the array value. It's not a heavy operation also. So this is just simpler to implement. But yeah, you're right. We can do that. Does that make sense? Perfect. So if everybody's clear with this, then I also have something more I wanted to discuss. But before we do that, I would prefer to solve a problem that doesn't need the range updates. Okay. So yeah, let's go to CodeChef. Contest 9. Okay. Now the problem I want to discuss with you guys first is matchsticks. Okay. Because if you get this problem, then it's a straight line to most other problems. Okay. So there are n matchsticks in total, and they're numbered from 0 to n minus 1. Okay. All matchsticks have the same length, but they have different rates of burning. Okay. So they have the same length, but they might burn at different rates. It's fine. So for the ith matchstick, we denote Bi as the time required for the matchstick to burn down completely if lighted at one end. Okay. And the matchsticks have a uniform rate of burning. If lighted at both ends simultaneously, the matchstick will only take half of the original time to burn down. Okay. Now we arranged, sorry, I'll just discuss this. So this part is pretty simple, right? We have n matchsticks numbered from 0 to n minus 1. Okay. They each have a burn rate called Bi. If a matchstick is burning only from one end, it takes Bi time to burn. And if it's burning at both ends, it takes Bi divided by 2 times to burn. This is simple. Okay. So now there's an arrangement of matchsticks. Okay. He keeps one point tied together to all other matchsticks, and the other points are free. Okay. So it's something like this thing. Okay. All the matchsticks are tied together at this point at the end, and all of the other ends are free. Okay. Now, matchstick I is adjacent to matchstick I plus 1. That's fine. Okay. So 0 is adjacent to 1, 1 is adjacent to 2, so on and so forth. But the matchsticks don't touch each other except for the rare. Okay. And the implication for this is that the matchsticks won't make each other burn until they reach the rare. Okay. So now there are Q queries. In each task, we ask if he lights the free end of all matchsticks. Free end is basically this end that's open. Okay. So if he lights the free end of all matchsticks, then how long will it, all matches between the range L to R. Okay. So in this case, L is 5, R is 12. He's lit all of these matchsticks. So if he lights all of the matches between range L to R, then how much time will it take for all of the matchsticks to get burnt? Okay. And let's just go through an example quickly. So we have 2, 3, 5, 1, 0, 1. Okay. So what this means is we have two matchsticks that have burn rate 3 and 5. Okay. And we only have one query, and he's lit both together. So this is a pretty useless test case. Let me give a better one. Okay. So let's say this is our example. Okay. We have 4 matchsticks. Okay. And the time for them to burn is something random. Okay. 2, 4, 8, 3. And we have one query where we burn the matchsticks from 2 to 3. Okay. Now what will happen? Well, first, matchstick, not 2 to 3, sorry, it's 0 base. So from 1 to 2. Okay, 4 and 8, that's what I mean. So if first matchstick 1 will burn down completely at 4 seconds of time. Okay. Then, because matchstick 1 has reached the end, it will light all of the other matchsticks as well. Okay. So now matchstick 0, 3 start burning as well. And at the same time, matchstick 2 will start burning on both ends. Okay. So now what will happen is matchstick 2 only had 4 seconds left, right? It was going to take 8 seconds initially, 4 seconds passed by. So now it had 4 seconds left. So matchstick 2 is going to take 4 by 2 is equal to 2 seconds left. 2 seconds, okay? Because it was lit on both ends. Otherwise, matchstick 0 was going to take 2 seconds to burn, okay? And it's only lit on one end, so it'll actually take 2 seconds, okay? So this also takes 2 seconds, okay? And matchstick 3 was going to take 3 seconds to burn, and it's only lit on one end, so it is going to take 3 seconds. All right. So what was the total time? Matchstick 1 burnt in 4 seconds. Okay, let's start from 0. Matchstick 1 burnt in 4 seconds. Okay. Matchstick 2 burnt in 4 plus 2 is equal to 6 seconds. Matchstick 0 burnt in 4 plus 2 is equal to 6 seconds. And matchstick 3 burnt in 4 plus 3 is equal to 7 seconds. Okay. So in total, it took 7 seconds to burn all of the matchsticks, right? Is that clear to everyone? Can I explain why matchstick 2 took 2 seconds? Ritik, in the problem statement, it was mentioned that if lighted at both ends, the matchstick will only take half of the original time to burn down. Okay. So once the matchstick 2 was done with 4 seconds of its time, so it had 4 seconds left, right? It was done with 4, it had 4 left. Okay. So at this point, when it was already done with 4, then it started being lit on both ends. So it had 4 seconds left and it was lit on both ends. So that also got divided by 2, okay? So 4 by 2, we got 2, and 4 plus 2, 6 seconds. So it took 6 seconds total, but only 2 seconds to burn down after the first event. Okay? Does that make sense, Ritik? You cannot understand the problem at all. Arsenal, can you unmute him so I can explain it to him? Or like, so you can discuss it?
Yeah, just a minute.
Ardhan, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna. Let me just unmute him. Hello?
Yeah, then you can speak now.
Yeah, you can speak. You can tell me what you had a doubt and I'll explain it. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, please explain the problem once again.
Okay, so I'll just explain it. Just tell me wherever you have a doubt. So we have n matchsticks and they're numbered from 0 to n minus 1. Okay. The ith, you know what a matchstick is, right? Like,
Yes.
okay, cool. So you have n matchsticks and they're numbered from 0 to n minus 1. Okay. The ith matchstick takes bi time to burn down. So as we saw in the problem here, the test case I had given was this 2483. So in this, the first matchstick takes 2 seconds to burn down. The next one takes 4 seconds, 8 seconds, and 3 seconds. Okay.
Yes.
Then, if there's a case where a matchstick is lit from both ends, okay. If it's lit from both ends, it will burn in half time. Okay. So if the matchstick had 5 seconds left, it will burn in 5 by 2 equal to 2.5 seconds. Okay. That's what it means. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now there's an arrangement of the matchsticks. Okay. It's basically that we've tied all of the matchsticks at one end and left all the other matchsticks free. Okay. Similar to okay, I'll just show you that only. Similar to this arrangement here, right? It's tied at the top and it's open at the bottom. Is that clear? Mate, can you hear me? Okay, I'll assume that's clear. And then while these ends are open, the guy basically lights the matchsticks in a range, okay, from 5 to 12 in this example. And you have to tell him how long it will take for all of the matchsticks in the entire array or whatever to burn down, okay? So the process is like this, okay? First, all of the matchsticks in the range will start burning, okay? Then one of the matchsticks, the flame will reach the end, okay? And that flame will light all of the other matchsticks as well, okay? And all of the matchsticks that were already in the range, those will now burn at double speed, okay? So that's the idea. Do you get it? Okay, you got it. Cool. So now let's explore the problem, okay? So what happens, okay? This is the event, okay? First, the quickest matchstick in the range burns down, okay? Then notice that we don't care about the second fastest matchstick. We only care about the slowest matchstick, okay? Because once the slowest matchstick is done, all of them will be done, okay? So what's this about the second fastest matchstick, okay? So there are two types of slow matchstick. Okay? First, the slowest matchstick outside the range, let's call it matchstick K, okay? It'll take, and let's say that the quickest matchstick burns down in X time, okay? So it'll take X plus BK amount of time, okay? Because at time X, it'll start being lit, okay? And after that, it'll take BK amount of time to actually burn, which is given in the statement, okay? Now, the slowest matchstick in the range, let's call it Y, this will take X plus Y minus X by 2 time to burn, okay? Sorry, BY minus X. And the reason for this is that originally it burned X seconds on its own, okay? And after these X seconds, it had by minus X seconds to burn, okay? These many seconds it had left to burn. But now that it's lit at both ends, it will burn that much in double time, right? Instead of taking by minus X, it'll take by minus X divided by 2 time, okay? So these are the two that we need to care about. Does that make sense, guys? If you have a doubt, you can put it. Is everything clear? Just write clear or something in the chat so I know. BK, okay. So B is the amount of time it takes to burn, okay? And K is just whichever matchstick has the slowest burn rate. Okay, instead we can say this, okay? K is the smallest, is the largest BK outside range, okay? And then we can say that the time it'll take to burn is X plus K. Or rather, K is the largest B outside the range, and Y is the largest B in the range, okay? And this will take X plus Y minus X by 2, okay? And this will basically just X by 2 plus Y by 2. Okay, does that make sense? Or outside of the range, there is no use of slow and fast. Of course there is. I'll give you an example, okay? In the example we discussed above, notice that this one, 0, so the range was 1 to 2, right? So 0 and 3 were outside the range, okay? Now 0 was slow and took 6 seconds to burn in total, 4 plus 2. And 3 was also, 0 was fast and took 6 seconds to burn total, but 3 was slower and it took 7 seconds to burn total. So our answer will be 7, okay? Not 6. So slow and fast, even outside the range, does matter. It affects the answer. Okay? That makes sense? Cool. We need to find the time at which all of the matchsticks will be burnt down, not just those in the range. Okay, I think that's the confusion you guys had. All right? Great. So our answer will simply be this, okay? As I've said, these two are the one that we need to be concerned about. So our answer will just be maximum of x plus k and x by 2 plus y by 2. Okay, this will be our answer. And we have 3 elements we need to find. We need to find x, k, and y. And let's say our range is LL to RR, okay? Cool. So let's create a segment tree. Rather, let's create segment tree possible many on the array of burnt rates, okay? And let's look at what we need to do, okay? So x is the quickest time, right? So it's the smallest burn time. So x is the smallest b inside the range. So in this case, x is a min query from LL to RR, right? Then k is the largest b outside the range, okay? So k is a max query from 0 to LL minus 1 and from RR plus 1 to n minus 1, okay? This is the entire range which is not lied inside the burn range. So this is where k can lie, okay? And finally, y is equal to max query from LL to RR, right? Does this make sense, guys? Guys, okay. Now note that for some queries, if there were no updates, we could use prefix sums easily. However, for min max queries, there is no alternative, okay? There's nothing else you could use. You only have to use segmentary, and we won't discuss it right now, but there's another pretty useless data structure called sparse table that you could use also, okay? But mainly segmentaries is important. Okay, so we already have our segment tree here, which was used for sum, right? So let's turn the segment tree into a minimum segment tree, okay? So now it's a min tree, right? That's all we had to do, okay? That's why I told you that we should do it this way. And okay, there's no real way to do otherwise. Okay, no, there is. Okay, no, we'll just have to make 2 segment trees. There's no alternative. So this is what we'll do, okay? We need a min segment tree and a max segment tree. So this is a bad way of doing it. But basically, you can write int c, which specifies what type of merge operation, okay? So if c is equal to 0, we'll return min. And if c is equal to 1, we'll return max, okay? And we can pass whatever segment tree we need, and we'll pass a c here, okay? So that we know which one we're making. Int c is just the type of segment tree, okay? So if c is equal to 0, it means that it's a min segment tree. If c is equal to what do you call it, 1, it means that it's a max segment tree. Okay. So we fix this. I'm going to remove all these random queries and the build. Okay. Actually, not this, let's stay. So we need to create two segment trees, right? Segment tree 0 is for min and segment tree 1 is for max. Are there any doubts? We can use pair for max and min. Yeah, we can use pair for max and min, but we'll have to modify it too much then. So I'm just using a different merge function for both, okay? But this is a very elegant way to change it. First we find min, then we find sum. Why do we need to find sum? I think that's relevant. What does updates mean here? Ayush, there's no updates in this question at all. But the issue is that for min and max, even if there's no update, you have to use segment tree. Okay, there's no other idea, way to do range min and max. So yeah, if you want, we can just. Okay, I don't want to get rid of it because we need to use it later, but we can do this. Okay, so the update is gone. Cool. So now we just have a build, merge, and query. And I'm sorry, let me just see here. Cool. So now let's solve the problem. The input format is pretty straightforward. Okay, there's one issue. And the issue is that we can't use int anywhere, okay? Because they require a floating point. So I'm going to change int to double, okay? I'm just defining it in macros. It's not a great way of doing it, but it is what it is. Okay. So let me just typecast in. Oh, I'll just change it here. Yeah, cool. So let's work on the segment tree, okay? I'm deleting everything. Actually, I won't delete so you guys can see this later, but I'm going to start coding, okay? So let's first build it, okay? So build 0 n minus 1 0. Then we need to give the array, okay? So we give it the array. Then we need to give it the segment tree. So let's do min first, okay? We give it segment tree 0. And let me just swap these. Okay. We've given it the segment tree. And finally, we need to tell which one it is. So it's 0. Okay. It's a min segment tree. Then we need to build the max one. So 0 n minus 1 0 error segment tree 1. And it's a max. So we say 1. Cool. So we've built both our segment trees. Okay. Just like that, we have a minimum segment tree and a max segment tree. Okay. Let's work on the queries now. Okay. So we were given Q queries, right? Okay, so we take it like that. So we can do sin Q, C and Q, while Q minus minus. Okay. And for each Q, we can take as input L and R. So signed LR, C and LR. Okay. Now let's find our values. Okay. What's the minimum in the range, which was X? Okay. X is equal to query 0 n minus 1 0. 0 and minus 0, you just to copy paste anywhere, it doesn't change. Okay. Then since it's a min thing, we need to do segment tree 0. Okay. Now LL and RR, we have as input LR. Okay. Let me, to make this clear, I'll do LL, RR. And our final parameter is C, which is 0 because it's min. I'm right about that, right? Yeah. Great. Okay, so we have X. Now K is equal to the maximum element outside the range, okay? So I'm going to do K is equal to 0 initially. Okay. Now, if LL is greater than 0, so that there is something before the range, we say K is equal to max K, query 0 n minus 1 0, segment tree 1, because we're doing max now, so we're doing 1. The range is 0 to LL minus 1, and the C is 1. Okay. And if RR is less than n minus 1, means there's something after the range as well. So do K is equal to max K, query 0 n minus 1 0, segment tree 1 0 n minus 1 Oh, not 0 and minus, I'm so sorry. Segment tree 1, the range should be RR plus 1 to n minus 1. And C is equal to 1 because we need to find max, right? And finally, we need to find Y. Y is the maximum element within the range. So we can do a direct single query. 0 n minus 1, 0 is segment tree 1 because it's a max query. Right? LL and RR will be as required, LLRR and 1. Great. So int answer 1, okay? The first answer it could be is this x plus k. So that's our first answer. And in answer 2, the second answer it could be with x by 2 plus y by 2. Okay. And we just need to output the max of them. So max answer 1, answer 2, and L. Okay. Let's try to run the function. Okay, errors. Segment tree I is equal to ARRL. What's the issue? Oh God, okay. 1 second. You can't use floating point types as array subscripts. I think it should be fine. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so let's try to run this on a sample. And we have 5, perfect. Okay, we must print it with 1 decimal place every time. So let me just do that. Cool. I'm just testing everything. Perfect. Looks like it's running well. I'm going to submit it. Great. So that's problem 1. Any doubts? EDs. What it EDs? I didn't get that before reading it. Oh, let me just do fast IO. Even though we shouldn't need it, it's a small problem. Yeah, AC. So I'm going to send you guys my submission link. So you guys can see the code, and along with it, that's a proper segment tree template along with the logic. So that should be useful for you guys. I'm too fast. Can you just tell me what point was unclear? Because I thought it was pretty clear. Okay, it's clear now. Great. I've sent you my solution link, so you can look at the code, you can look at the comments describing the logic, or you can look at the comments describing the segment tree, and you can look at the segment tree template, okay? Great. A question not related to this problem. Is it worth it to switch from Python to CPP? I'm not going to explain this, but yeah, it's worth it. Okay, let's go back. And the next problem I wanted to do is, it's a little harder. It's called laser, okay? Arsen, can we skip this problem? I think it's too complicated, and I want to do lazy propagation before we leave.
Yes, you can do that.
Okay, so I'm going to skip this problem for now. Maybe I'll do a session next week where we'll discuss the more complex problems. but I want to discuss another topic with you. So for that topic, unfortunately, we didn't include it in the contest, but I'll just show you the problem. The topic is in the contest. If it helps, we just didn't include a problem. So the problem is called flipping coins. Okay, and this is the problem statement. There are n coins kept on the table, numbered from 0 to n minus 1. Initially, each coin is kept tails up. You have to perform two operations. The first operation is that we flip all coins numbered from A to B inclusive. Okay, so this is the command 0AB. Okay, it means that all of the tails becomes heads and all of the heads become tails. Easy. The next one is answer how many coins numbered between A and B inclusive are heads up. So this is represented by the command 1AB. Okay. So initially everything will be 0, and then as we start flipping things, we'll change it to 1. Okay. So let's look at the constraints. N is less than equal to 10 to the power 5, and Q is less than equal to 10 to the power 5. Okay. Now this is a great problem because it requires something we haven't discussed yet. Okay. So our segment tree would be something like this. Okay. I'll show you the intricacies in a while, but our segment tree would be something like this. Okay. I'm going to erase everything from the last problem I've sent to submission so you can take a look. All right. Okay, let me just change some things back. Okay. Just give me a second. I'm just changing some stuff. You know, I'll just pass some random CO guys. Let me just, yeah. Okay, so in this case, I'm just passing some random C because I don't want to rewrite the entire code, but you don't actually need the C, okay? Okay, so our segment will be like this. Segment tree at I stores the answer for range LR, okay? This is obviously the basic segment tree, okay? Now our segment tree stores the number of nodes that are heads up. Okay, so initially all nodes have tails, so everything is 0. Okay, now we need to perform range updates to flip a range of coins. Okay, so let's look at something. When you flip one coin, okay, let's say 0 is tails, 1 is heads. Okay, if you flip one coin, then the new value becomes 0 minus whatever what the coin was, right? Because tails become heads, so 1 minus 0 is 1, and heads becomes tails, so 1 minus 1 is 0, right? So this is the new value of the coin. Okay, so for a range it will be something like this. Okay, the new sum will be size of range minus the old sum. Okay, because we're just adding this across the entire range. Okay, so let's say we have size of range. Okay, so size of range multiplied by C is the old sum, and size of range multiplied by 1 is just the size of range. Okay, so if we do it for a range, then this will be the new value. However, we have not actually discussed the mechanism to perform a range update. So let's do that. Okay, now the most basic way to do a range update is something like this. Okay, we iterate from this starting point to the ending point. Okay, we iterate from the starting point to the ending point, and we say update the value at location I. Okay, but unfortunately then updates start taking order of n log n. Okay, and we can't have this n coefficient. It needs to be just be log n. Okay, is the problem clear to everyone? Can segment tree always be used instead of sparse table? Naman, like, yes, functionally it can be used. There are some very, very annoying problems in which you need an order of one, like a constant time query. So in that case, you'll need to use a sparse table, but that's usually very rare or a very complex problem. It's usually something like, like a tree, you need the lowest common ancestor, so you need a order of one query. It's usually in some edge case like that, but for almost every problem, segment tree is sufficient. Arjundu, yeah, binary lifting is log n, right? So the fastest LCA is still sparse table. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes. Okay, good. So let's get back to the problem, okay? Did everybody understand the problem? I know you guys were having a discussion, which is good. Pavan, Teja. Okay, the terms are not really relevant. We were just discussing something else, okay? But that wasn't relevant to the session. I was just answering a doubt. Did you understand the problem that I showed you? Which was flip coins? Okay, good. Now, this is a naive update for range, okay? However, we want to remove this n coefficient, okay, and make it order of log n. How do we do that? Well, take a look at queries, okay? Queries, okay? In queries also, we're querying a range and it's taking order of log n, right? So in updates, why don't we try something similar and see how it works, okay? The problem with our current update method is that whenever we're updating a range, we're updating the entire subtree all at once, okay? So let's go back here. I remember we discussed what would be like to update node 9. Well, the problem was that, okay, for node 9, we would have to go all the way, but let's say we had an update from 1 to 4, okay? We have to update node 1, which is 1 to 4, okay? The problem with our current method is we're going to node 7, updating it. We're going to node 8, updating it. We're going to node 9, updating it. Going to node 10, updating it. Then we're lifting up, updating node 3, node 4. We're lifting up again and updating node 1. Okay? But the thing is, we may never have to access those values. Okay? Think of it like this. Let me show you guys on this. Okay? Imagine that you have, let's say you have the 5, 6 range updates, okay? So you have an array of size 7, okay? And initially all the values are 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, okay? Then let's say you have a range update from 1 to 3, you want to update 6, okay? You want to add 6 to all of them. So we can do 6, 6, 6, and then 0, 0, 0, 0, okay? And this took 3 dot log n, okay? Now let's say we have to update 4 to 7, okay? And this is assuming our own method, okay? 4 to 7, we're adding, let's say 7, okay? So you have 6, 6, 6, and then 7, 7, 7, 7, okay? So the time complexity for this would be 4 into log n. Then let's say we're updating 2 to 5 with the value 3, okay? With the value 3, okay? So we add 3, 9, 9, and then we add 3, 10, 10, 10. Am I right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, this remains 7. Okay? Yeah. So this is our new one. And this we had to update 4 values. So it took 4 dot log n. I'm sorry, even, yeah. Okay, that's right. Cool. So let's look at the time complexity for this, okay? These are 3 like pretty small updates, but this scales terribly, so I'll just let you know beforehand. So our total time complexity was 11 dot log n, right? However, note that we have not even used a query up till now, okay? Imagine that the query happened now. Now we want the sum from 4 to 6, okay? Now the query only happened now, right? So we need to update all of the values from 1, 2, 3, 4 from here to 5, 6 here, okay? So realistically, we spent 11 log n doing it one by one, but to answer the query, we only needed to do 3 log n, right? 7 updates were useless. So the idea behind lazy propagation is there's no need to update a range until you actually use it. Okay? Otherwise, this is redundant updates. So let me show you something in Keynote. Okay? So over here, we discussed what if you have to update 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So, and initially, we were going in all the way, updating all of them. But what if we updated one, okay, this node here, and we just marked it saying, okay, let's say we have to add 6 to all of them. Okay. So if we have to add 6 to all of them, then the value will change by 6 into 4 is equal to 24, right? So we add 24. Okay. And we'll say that we'll mark it. Okay. We'll say update 6 to everything later. Okay. Which means that we don't want to do it right now. It's not needed right now. It's not necessary. We've added 24 over here, but we'll update this entire subtree later. Okay. We don't even need them right now. And similarly, if we have 1 to, let's say our update was 1 to 6, okay? Then we update 1 to 4, we add 24. And then we update 5 to 6, okay? We add 1 to 4, add node 1 and node 5, we'll say, we'll update their subtrees later, okay? That's the logic. So this is how it's implemented. Lazy, right? So we have a lazy function, okay? And we have an array also. We have an array lazy I, okay? And this array will store something specific, okay? So in the sum array, for some updates, it can store what you have to add to each node, okay? For some other update, maybe for the update we have in the question, actually, for flipping updates, it can store 0 if you don't have to flip, or 1 if you have to flip, right? So that's what lazy does. It just, lazy is what we use to store our updates for later, okay? So now if lazy I is 0, then we don't have to do anything, right? If lazy I is 0, then for sum, we don't have to add anything. For flipping, we don't need to flip anything. So we can just return the function, say our job here is done, okay? Else, we update the node I with whatever we have to do, okay? So for flipping updates, I discussed in my IDE, we do, where is it? We do this thing, right? For flipping updates, we do this. For sum, we just add all of the sums, like nothing complicated. And after we're done with this, if lazy I have children, I mean, if the ith node has children, then on the left child, we add, not we add, but on the left child, we push our lazy value, okay? And pushing can be different, okay? So in case of sum, pushing will mean addition. So let's say lazy left child I is equal to 3 and lazy I is equal to 8, okay? Which means that left child I has to add 3 to each element in the subtree, and lazy I has to add 8 to each element in the subtree. Then to push this, we just say that lazy L child I is equal to 11, okay? We're just piling it on, right? In terms of flipping, however, let's say lazy L child I is equal to 1, which means that it has to flip. And lazy I is also 1, which means this also has to flip, okay? Then this one become 2, right? There's no such 2. But if we flip everything twice, then it goes back to normal, right? So we can do something like a 1 minus operation, okay? So we can say lazy L child I is equal to 1 minus lazy I. Okay, that's the update operation. So if it's 1, then it'll come 0. And if this is 0, then it'll become 1. I mean, it'll stay 1, whatever. That's the point. Yeah, okay, great. So that's the idea. So we push lazy down, okay? We've performed, the idea is that we've performed the update at this node, we've added 24. And now we're just telling these two children nodes that you're going to have to update at some point. Not right now, whenever you use, we'll have to update it, okay? So we push down the lazy, and then we set our current lazy to 0, okay? Because we've performed whatever updates we needed to do, right? Node 1 has already passed on the information. So node 1 has no function in updating anymore. So we set lazy I to 0, okay? And the trick is that whenever we're querying and whenever we're updating, at each function call, we call lazy update. So let's say we're updating over here. Before we do anything, the first thing we do is call lazy update. Okay. Similarly, query, the very first thing we do in the function, we call lazy update. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So now how does the range update actually work? Well, there are 3 states as earlier. So whenever our the update range, we need to update range LLRR with value X. Okay. And in the flipping thing, it won't work. So in the flipping thing, it's just value 1, I guess. Okay. So if we're completely inside the range, then we perform the update. Okay. So if, I mean, with the lazy 1 becomes 0, 0 becomes 1. Okay. That's the idea. So we perform the update in that range. Okay. If it's completely overlapping, and we run this lazy update function. So it pushes down the update to its children as well. Okay. So let's say we're over here. Okay. Let's say we're in node 1. Okay. It performs this flip at node 1. And then it pushes the update down to 3 and 4. It says that you guys do it whenever you want. Okay. So we push down the update and then we can return the value. Okay. We don't even need, we can just return from here. Okay. With all of this stuff, it'll happen later whenever we want. Okay. We don't need to do it right now. Then let's say that R is less than LL or L is greater than RR, which means that the node we need to update doesn't lie in the subtree. In that case, as earlier, we can just return the value because it doesn't need to be changed. So if we're updating 1 to 4 and we're at this node, then nothing needs to change here. So we can just return the value and call it a day. And finally, if neither of these are true, that means that the value we need to update does lie in the range somewhere. So then we can do as like we did with update earlier, remember? Right. We did return si is equal to merge update function left child, right child. We do the exact same thing here. Okay, literally no change. The only change comes over here. Instead of waiting for the 1 point where we can add, right? In update, we were waiting for the exact point. Over here, once we reach a valid range, we add it and we leave. So therefore, our update function has the same complexity as our query function for range updates. Okay. Yeah, Pradeep, XOR with 1 is right. I usually use that, but 1 minus 1 is easier. Ayush Agarwal, can we do it in short? Oh, this must have been a nightmare for you. Okay. So Ayush, the basic concept is this, okay? You have n coins on a table, okay? All of them are tails up initially, okay? We get 2 queries. The first query says that you have to flip all of the coins in a range. So heads become tails, tails become heads. And the second query asks us to count the number of heads in a range, okay? That's the problem, Ayush. Is it fine? Yeah, and Ardhan, yeah. So basically, we update the range that's overlapped with the querying range. That's right. So like any, okay, let me show you. So whenever we're running a query, okay, whenever we're running a query, say for the query, we need node 1 and node 5, okay? Then all of the nodes that are intersecting with this 5, 6 are intersecting, 5, 6, and let's say 5, 7 are intersecting, right? So you will always have to visit node 2 before you visit node 5. Okay. So on your way to query, like while you're querying, you will inevitably visit all of the intersecting nodes. You can't avoid them. Okay. So while we're visiting those nodes, we can run the lazy update and it'll work. Is that fine, guys? Does it make sense to everyone? Ayush and I don't know the other guy. Okay, cool. Great. So let me write. So lazy is another array like the segment tree. One change, I'm not going to make lazy inside because it's too much work. So I'll make lazy a global function. Okay. N is less than equal to 10 to the power 5. So you can say constant n is equal to 1e5 plus 10. 10 is just for safety, doesn't matter. Okay, I can say int lazy 4 into n. Okay, and let's define the lazy update function. Okay, it's void. So if lazy I is equal to 0, then we can return, nothing needs to happen. Otherwise, okay, wait. Otherwise, let's perform the lazy update, okay? So int size of range is equal to r minus l plus 1, okay? And the sum in range is equal to segment tree I. So sum in range is equal to segment tree at I. Yeah, it's getting too complicated. The sum in range is equal to segment tree at I. Okay. So now we just have to flip it. So as I discussed earlier, our flipping operation is equal to size of range minus old sum. So our new sum, segment tree I, is equal to size of range minus sum in range. Okay. So we've performed the update. Now we need to push down. So if L is not equal to R, otherwise, if L is equal to R, it doesn't have children. But if L is not equal to R, then segment tree at the left child gets XORed with 1 and segment, oh, not segment tree, I'm so sorry. Don't make this mistake, I do it a lot. But replace segment tree with lazy, okay? Lazy at R child I XOR equal to 1. Okay? So we basically told them that if they didn't have to flip earlier, then we've told them that now you have to flip. And if they had to flip earlier, then we told them no need. Okay. So we pushed down our lazy, and now we can just set lazy as equal to 0. Problem solved, right? Okay. So this is our lazy update. And for our merge function, we don't need min anymore. We need sum. Okay. And we don't need, actually we do need a build function, but everything will just be 0. So instead of referring to ARR, I'm just referring to 0, okay? And for AR, we'll just pass some dummy array for now, but you can remove this as well if you want. I'll remove it actually. Okay. There's no array we're building on. We're building it on some values we want. Cool. So this will become 0. Then the query lazy update, we actually need to do this. So now it'll become ILR segment tree. Okay, that's it. That's all we need to add to queries. Now let's look at what we need to add to update. Okay, so first thing we need to do the same thing as earlier, ILR segment tree. But this will change. Okay, now instead of X, you'll have LL and RR, a range update, right? And you won't need a value Y. So let me read. Okay, some work's required, but let's look back at the lazy conditions. If L is greater than equal to LL and R is less than equal to RR, okay? So I'm just updating here. If L is greater than equal to LL and then R is less than equal to RR, okay? then what do we need to do in that case? Let's look at the presentation again. Add x to lazy eye. Okay, so if we want to add it, we'll just XOR it. Actually, we can just do lazy eye is equal to 1, and then we can we need to push it down, right? So we can just run lazy update. Right? And now we can just return easy, we can just return segment TI. Great. Now it's just making a fuss because we removed some values. So we can say LLRR and LLRR. And that should be our segment tree ready to go. Let me just test this out and I'll look at the chat in a second. We don't need an array. Okay. 4 into n plus 5 I'll say because it's one based indexing. So I'm just leaving some room for myself. Okay. And let's handle the queries. Okay. Let's input the number of queries. Input format is that only? No. They're on the same line. Okay, we've inputted the number of queries. Now, while q minus minus, we need to input the type of query. Okay, we inputted the type of query. And so if query is 0, we need to flip the coins, right? So if it's 0, then we will input LR. Okay, then we need to perform an update. So 0 n minus 1 0 segment tree LR, and then C can be some random thing, doesn't matter. Okay, that's our update. Now for our query, similarly, we can just do cout query 0 n minus 1 0 segment tree LR and some random C. I think this should be fine. 0 n minus 1 0 segment tree LRC. Yeah, good to go. Okay, I'm going to run this and test it, and then I'll look into your queries. Oh, we forgot to build a segment tree. So I'll do that. Build 0 n minus 1 0. This should be it, right? Yeah. What? Oh. 0 n minus 1 0 segment tree and some random C. Okay, this should be valid. Zero one zero two one as required. So I'm going to submit this. Yeah, so that's the problem. Any doubts? Should we make struct? We don't need to make struct, Pradeep. What if L child is not in range? Okay, or R child is not in range. Well, notice that any node, any node which has a left child, for example, node 3 will always have a right child as well, right? You'll never have a segment tree where a node has a left child but not a right child. Okay, and that's like intuitive because you're splitting the range into two parts. So if you're splitting into just one part, then it's no sense, right? So that's why if it has a left child, it'll have a right child for sure, right? Now look in the lazy update function. Okay, if L is not equal to R, then it means the size of the range is greater than 1, right? It's not just one element. And in that case, we have to split it further, right? Left child and right child have to be in range. There's no other situation. Okay? That's how we know. Yeah, I'll just share the submission link, but did that make sense to everyone? About the out of bounds thing? Pavan, okay. So I'll just answer this after finishing the stuff. Yeah, correct answer. So I'm just going to send my submission link to you guys. Look at the number of wrong submissions. From a year ago. Yeah. Okay, so this is my submission, and I think we're out of time as well. So I'm going to end the session here. But if you guys have any general doubts about CP, then I'll take a few right now if you want. And okay, so Pavan asked, how do I get better? And yeah, I guess it's an important question for beginners. So I'd say that first of all, follow the learning series in order. Okay, do it from week 0 to week 1 all the way to week 10. And don't skip problems, right? If you don't understand a problem in the week, then make sure you look at the editorial. We have hints for all problems, so make sure you do it completely, right? Like no matter what resources, unfortunately, like there's no substitute for just solving problems. So do all of the learning series. You can take a look at the sessions as well. There's a learning session on every week other than 1 week right now. And so in the sessions, we usually go through the problems of that week and go through some of the theory. So do all of the problems, look at the hints, look at all the sessions, and it should be fine. Combinatorics is not today. Combinatorics is in a few days, I think. It's on Thursday, if I'm not wrong. Okay, what kind of problems it can solve? So again, the general problem is just a range query, okay? So if you have any range query, start by assuming that's a segment tree problem, okay? And there are a lot of problems it can solve, okay? So something like this, okay? Find the lists in a range, okay? That's a segment tree there, okay? If I tell you that I want all elements in a range to be a module or something, that's also segment tree, okay? If you have to know this kind of query. Some segment tree editorial, please share. What do you mean editorial? We have resources attached in the week if you've seen. If you want to know more about a segment tree. Okay. So I'm going to end the session here. If any of you guys want to contact me, you can message me on a Codeforces account. Okay. This is my Codeforces handle, so you can message me on that if you want to contact me.